Hi. Thanks for tuning in again. This is my solo episode number 3, and this can be enjoyed by all. I am still doing a few more episodes before I start into my mental readiness series, and there's definitely, yes, a lot of information that can be applied to all audiences. So I hope you enjoy it. So, I'm Nora of the podcast Rock Your Life with Nora Finch, which is a show inspired by my 20 plus years in holistic wellness and my verbal and physical self defense training in the Israeli system of Krav Maga. Okay, for those of you who haven't listened to me before. So, just to jump right into it, moving forward, this is episode 3. And in episode 2, we talked about our influences and the authoritarian type disciplining system most of us have been raised by here in America. So now I'm going to go into talking about the title of this episode, which is Reclaiming Our Power Through Mind, Body, Spirit Connection. I'm also going to talk about how we've lost our power and what that is due to. With the terminology you may have heard, conditioning or programming, and society trying to dictate how we live. And we have forgotten we are powerful creators who have something called intuition or gut feelings, and we can heal ourselves and heal others. Okay, so I'm going to explain a little bit more, but as a result of this conditioning and programming of how we've been raised, as a result of this, right, this part of how we have lost our power. So, number 1, societal norms and conditioning. Now you've listened, hopefully, to episode 2, and you've already heard me talk about what has influenced our thinking, which is media, society, family, friends, organized religion. The list goes on, right? And so this is where we have become lost in trusting our intuition, it's called, or our gut feelings. This is where, because of the conditioning and what are considered societal norms, we walk our lives thinking that we should do this or that. And there are have tos and supposed tos, and why also we feel like we have to have permission to live the lives that we want. That includes getting permission from our committed significant others. These are the very structures and guidelines most of us have been raised under, which very much keep us repressed and disempowered, as well as it can leave us feeling very rejected. I wanted also to say too that, these are my opinions and experiences, and this is just my perception. Whether you agree with it or not, it doesn't really matter, because you can choose to listen on or, stop the recording. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. Okay, so the judgment of others, judgment of ourselves, learned fears and illusions of life we feel are true of us, are the beginnings of shutting down who we truly are in our core essence. Not only just telling us, in the authoritarian, if you want to call it dictatorship or disciplinary system, it's not just the telling us no, but it's also the shutting us down. For example, when somebody says you can't make a career out of that dream, whether it's music or art or whatever passion you have. That's just an example of something somebody might say, okay? Where we do feel like, we rejected, shut down, our ideas and thoughts don't matter, it's not, things aren't possible. This affects our belief systems. Other examples might be pretending to be somebody we're not to just fit in. Marrying a person you probably shouldn't have because they got pregnant, having kids when you don't want to. These are just some examples. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to number 2, helping us remember that we are powerful creators. And I'm going to explain this, okay? Because I feel like when I talk about either being powerful or being creators, sometimes it can sound very fantastical, especially when I use that word fantastical, meaning that it sounds so far-fetched. It sounds impossible. It sounds like, what are you talking about? Like I could see somebody, and I used to think like that in, some ways. So part of reclaiming our power is we're going to realize we are creators and that we can create the lives that we want. So I'm going to give you an example in terms of creating your life. Okay, this example. Say when you thought or you think it's weird that you thought of somebody and they called you or you ran into them, or you meet someone with the same name as somebody you know, or someone looks like so and so, and you're like, that was a weird coincidence, or that was weird. And you never really realized and put it together that you could actually use it to your benefit and create this on purpose, did you? How would we know? That's how I'll give the example again of my mom, who she did not teach me to be psychic while she was very psychic, and she was reading my mind, and I really wanted that ability, and I was intrigued by it, and I subconsciously just started thinking about things. Not a big. For those of you who haven't heard again parts of my story, I'm going to give the example right now. Is basically after I realized when she read my mind, I was like, I want to do that. And when I was dating, if you want to call it dating, my husband at the time, I was just basically thinking about, it's such a funny story, but I have to share it, that if somebody ever had messed with me, what would happen, right? I was just like, I don't know that I was playing with this thought, but obviously I was thinking about it kind of hard. And, of course, that attractive, protective nature. I went to the bar that night and I went to sit down and they pulled the chair from under me. And after that moment in time, by the way, my boyfriend was not around at that time. So basically, that's the beginning of my stories of kind of playing around with different ideas. And then I started studying the subconscious mind. Okay. So I mentioned that a lot in that book, just helped just me so much in my life, along with a lot of other books. So I want to tell you that's how I started out, is I just started, whenever I was thinking that I wanted to create something in my life, it was always actually, even though that sounds like it wasn't good for myself, it was all the things I've ever asked for have been for love of myself, whether I want to learn more about myself or learn more about others. I always asked for messages. I always asked, bring me somebody to help me with these things or whatever it was. So after that moment in time of seeing what I could create, I just kept doing it with a bunch of other things. And then as I learned, I actually realized, wow, these things I'm making like I've made everything else in my life happen. And, how did this, how did I do this? And if people knew that they could do it on purpose, can you imagine how amazing this would be in our lives? So that's a huge part of how I stay positive in my life, is that I always know I can create because I've done such magical things with just thinking and thinking good thoughts. And you will always be helped in this life if their willingness to grow and ask for help. Okay. So there's really a long example, but you needed to hear that. And that's one of the first places, yes, again, that I started realizing I was putting all these things together. Okay. So building confidence, now that I've told you can do this on purpose and to your benefit. Okay, obviously that takes a certain amount of belief, but you can practice on all sorts of things. I mean, I feel like I've done it so fast now. I can have it. Actually, just the other day, we were talking about somebody at my new work, and the person that we were talking about came in about like less than 5 minutes later. So it really happens really quickly now, but that's one thing you can always, practice. And if you're like, oh, that didn't work, I mean, it might be within a few days, so it will eventually come about. So this building confidence. Okay. So natural healing, I'm going to go into. This is another area to talk about in terms of reclaiming your power. So I say, seek for thyself your truths about all things. And that I believe that Western medicine has its place. And as a holistic practitioner, I believe we can walk alongside them. I'm obviously not going to use an essential oil on a broken leg, okay? I just think it's pretty fascinating to see some reactions when I kind of do a little bit of an interview process with a few of the doctors that I meet. And I basically just tell them, hey, I'm a holistic practitioner. I've been doing this for X amount of years. And I just want to let you know that, the things you might recommend to me, might have some questions about it. And I blend my Eastern thought into it and natural healing. So, just as long as I'd like to know, does this work for you, or is this something you respect, or is this going to be a problem, right? So kind of do an interview thing when I find somebody that I am going to maybe work with, and for my daughter as well. Okay, so that's just a being assertive thing. Okay. Um, so I wanted to also remind about mind body spirit connection when we talk about that, is because Western medicine does not talk about it, right? So they are used to just looking at the physical types of systems and, something's wrong with the organ, let's do this or that or whatever. They're not thinking about the mind's ability and, belief systems and things that kind of talk. Some people, again, it's not something that's just being taught out there. I think it is definitely starting, integrative medicine. If you want to look into that, they are talking about it more. But so I want to remind you in the body's natural ability to heal itself, which it can do. So, I would say it can do it. But you have to be willing to be involved. Sometimes you might have to do nutritional supplements. There's different sorts of things, but I also believe in prayer/intention and, yes, healing the body and, that sort of a thing. So I just want to remind you again, if you know anything about Native Americans and other cultures that deal with illness and disease, and they did not do it with prescription drugs. And that's another thing that I explored as well, because I knew that I don't have to take something in order, to feel better, like a stomach ache. So I was learning during the time early 20s, why don't I just put my hand on my stomach like you used to do when you were little, right? Like my stomach hurts, I'm going to put my hand on my stomach. That is an example. And then just other things that I've done, which I could give you totally so many different types of examples, and hands-on healing and different things for headaches and all these sorts of things, which back then people didn't actually have a lot of those sorts of things because they weren't stressing about the same things that they do now in terms of getting headaches. Okay. So do you just believe something just because someone says that it is so? Meaning, did you ever hear those stories of people being told they never walk again? Just like my one podcast show with John Cardiel, where he was told his spine was severed. And yes, he is walking. Even though he has a limp, he's definitely walking. And that story is about how he practiced on getting movement in his feet and his toes for like 3 months. He just focused on it every day. Okay, so that story is magical. Okay, hearing stories of being told you'd never walk again, or somebody, that you were supposed to die on said date and didn't, or told by somebody that they could never get pregnant and did. Like, why do you think these things are? Like they're not just, if you want to call them miracles or whatever, but we all have heard these stories. Okay, now I realize this topic of Western medicine and doctors, a lot of you all listeners maybe are mostly into Western medicine, or maybe follow it, or whatever it is. I'm coming from that perspective, is that maybe you consider the medical field and those sorts of people, also people with, certifications and all these sorts of things. Excuse me, I have my own certifications, but all these sorts of people that you may feel a doctor is an authority figure, right? We're going to them because we have an issue and they have way more experience than us, okay? So I want you to ask yourself, I want you to just consider some questions regarding having someone else assess you as well as your friends and family, okay? So when I bring up going to a doctor, and maybe some of you are doctors listening to this, I'd like you to ask yourself if you would consider doing a little bit more research after getting some advice that you're given, okay? After, I'm going to tell you a couple of just little examples from my clients. Okay, so one of whom, she looked up her prescription because she told me, Nora, my skin is turning brown and I'm going to stop using this cream I was recommended. I went in to get into something for dry skin and I looked it up and it was medication. Then there was another mom that I knew who her 7-year-old daughter had some eczema problems, which is something I don't know a lot of you know about, is a skin condition that can be alleviated by basically looking at the diet and essential fatty acids and different allergies. There's lots of things that you can find out if you seek alternative practitioners like naturopaths, integrative doctors, all these sorts of things, okay? Eczema. So she went to take her in because she had really bad eczema all over. Her eyes were puffy, like all sorts of things she had, very severe eczema. And she was being recommended steroid creams and soaking in bleach baths, which I don't know, many of you know of the suppressing of the steroid creams, and it's recommended for a lot of things, including cystic acne. And so I've dealt with a lot of my clients coming in and telling me, as an esthetician, skincare therapist, holistic practitioner, these different stories of things they were recommended by doctors or dermatologists. And the point of me telling you the story is not to blame anybody. Okay, perhaps these doctors didn't know what they were doing. Maybe they didn't know, what to give advice on. Maybe they were just purposely giving, just trying to sell things, medication. Um, there's so many different reasons. And like I said, I can respect walking and working alongside them. But I just want to encourage people to just seek other things out there, because all of these sorts of things, whether I'm talking about, I feel like you should seek alternative things because there is almost always a natural way to heal something, almost anything, but people don't always seek it. They just go to the doctors, kind of like you just take Advil when you get cramps for a chick, PMSing or whatever when you're young. So there's just so many things out there, and I just want to let people know that there are different things out there, because a lot of times, I'm going to give the example of acne, is people being put on Accutane or all these different things that jack up their body, their skin, and they have lots of side effects. And people just don't know that there's so many different options, and there's so many things out there. That's for another show. So always get a second opinion, explore other areas. And so, yes, this is a part of reclaiming our power and not just taking somebody's advice for it. And, I forgot to give the example too of acne, is they're prescribing all these either medications or topical things, and then the acne keeps coming back because it's a result of internal problems going on in the body. Okay, so nutritional deficiencies, stress, like there's so many different things. Okay, so lastly, I want to end this episode. Again, we are still talking about reclaiming our power, and this list as well could go on like so long. I could talk about so many things in society where it's like, oh my gosh, why are we doing that? Like, why are we just following? It's kind of like the same thing with the rules going on now. It's May 2021, and it has been over a year, and we've been mandated to wear these masks for so long. And everybody, we all have something to say about this is what's been going on. But the point of the story is that, the following. So this is a good example. I thought about this a long time ago, especially when I was learning about self-defense, is that, and assertiveness at that time. Okay. And, it can seem like a lot of these sorts of things are out of our hands, like, and what are we questioning? Okay. Like, I can't do anything is like maybe some ways like people might look at this. Okay, so the question is, in reclaiming our power, is that why are some companies out there, I'm going to go back into getting information about us. Why are there companies out there that ask for a social security number, right, when there's other ways to identify us? And then a lot of us don't know, especially, how your level of maturity, that our identity can be stolen like this. There's so many other examples. Again, like I said, we're just following and doing. It's almost like the same thing too as a register at the cashier register. same thing, is that somebody asking you, can I have your email? Or let me have your email or phone number or whatever, and you just give it to them because you don't want to argue or whatever it is to get on their email list or whatever. Where now I'm just like, no, no, thank you, or whatever it is, and that's just my easy way out that I found out that I can say without, so I don't want to say anything before. So these are just some examples that I'm just showing you. Like, let's look at where our power has been taken from us. And it really starts a long time ago. And so a lot of things in our culture, unless we start changing them, helping change them, basically, right? Standing up for ourselves and saying things like no, like I just said to the Social Security number, things are going to keep moving forward in the same ways that they've always been doing. Going, however you want to call it. Okay, so I know this was a lot to digest, but let me just recap again what we were talking about. This is about reclaiming our power and the mind-body-spirit connection, and looking at the societal norms and a lot of what is making us, like, affecting how we move through life. This is about personal power. This is about freedom, and taking ownership of ourselves, and being our own guidance system. Okay, so that's what I was meaning to say by this episode, that I think everybody can appreciate, and maybe not everybody wants to experience what it is like to have a sense of freedom, or just being free in life and what that means. I understand that, but these episodes are meant to share of how we can become more empowered when we feel a more stronger sense of self in the world, okay? So thank you for listening to this, and I will be talking to you in episode 4. Thanks. Again, Nora, my website is rockyourlifewithnorafinch.com. And you can check out my shows on Spotify, Pandora, and much more. Thanks for tuning in.